Just look at this. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, somebody came and dug up my front garden. But I don't mind, because what they did was they laid fibre optic cable, which means I went from having probably the slowest Wi-Fi on the planet to now having fast Wi-Fi. I wouldn't say it's super fast, but it is much, much faster. And this has completely changed my life, particularly when it comes to mentoring. Because before I had high-speed fibre optic cable installed, it was always very hit and miss as to whether I'd be able to use something like Zoom or FaceTime or WhatsApp. Now, because of lockdown and because it was difficult to meet, if not impossible at times, to meet face-to-face, I've had to rely upon using FaceTime or Zoom or WhatsApp for mentoring. And the trouble was that if the wind was blowing in the wrong direction, I think that it just sort of blew my Wi-Fi connection away. And it was very embarrassing. I'd have drop connections, we'd have to revert to the old-fashioned way of doing it by phone. It really wasn't ideal. But now with my new fibre optic cable, I can do so much more. Now before lockdown, the main way that I would offer mentoring would be I would meet you either in Nottingham or I would come closer to you up to a distance of 150 miles. But over lockdown, I realised that actually one of the great things about doing it over Zoom or FaceTime or WhatsApp, when it was working, is that I could offer the same amount of time, but you can have the flexibility of choosing how you use that time. And what I found works really well is to take the guaranteed 4 hours, because if we meet face to face, I'd guarantee you 4 hours. If we needed to go on longer, I'd go on longer to say 5 hours, although most people's eyes would glaze over at 4 hours because it can be very intense. But taking the guaranteed time, we could have a meeting online, for example, for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, get started, get somebody started, get them up and running, and then they could use the remainder of their time as they felt fit. So they could perhaps, have like 20 minutes every other week, or 20 minutes every month, or half an hour every other month, whatever they felt worked for them. You could have 2 meetings in 2 consecutive days and then come back in 3 months. It really didn't matter, it's your time. So you could go away after the first meeting, get started in whatever it was you're doing in property, and then check back in as often as you wanted to and whenever you wanted to, using the residue of the time that you have available. So that worked really well. And then I started thinking, well, now that lockdown is over, there's actually another option, which is we could go back to face-to-face meetings, either in Nottingham, or I could come to you up to a distance of 150 miles. But what we could do is we could keep that meeting a bit shorter so that your eyes aren't going to glaze over after 4 hours, which is what I used to see so often, because 4 hours together can be very intense when it's one-on-one. We could have a shorter meeting of, say, an hour and a half or 2 hours, either in Nottingham, or I could come to you up to a distance of 150 miles. And then whatever's left over, you could use that in the weeks or months after to check in to make sure that you're on track. Or if you have any questions, you can come back to me and ask those questions. Or if you find some deals, we can have a look at the deals together, however you want to use that time. So it can be much more flexible. So I'm now tweaking how I do mentoring in this post-lockdown era. And you now basically have 5 choices. We can get together for 4 hours in Nottingham. As I say, 4 hours is the guaranteed minimum. If we need to go on longer, we go on longer, but most people find 4 hours is enough. Or I could come to you up to a maximum distance of 150 miles. By the way, if you're 200 miles away, it just means that you travel 50 miles towards me, which I hope is okay. So we could do that. Or we could do the whole thing online, so you could have all of your guaranteed 4 hours online, but you can take the time as and when you want it. Or, and I think this is really exciting, and I think that these are probably the best 2 options, to be honest, is to get together face-to-face for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then you can have the time that's left whenever you like online, which means that we can meet in Nottingham and you can have your hour and a half or 2 hours, or if you prefer for me to come closer, you can have me come nearer to you and then you can have your hour and a half, 2 hours. And then whatever's left over, you can use that time in the future as you feel fit, to check in, to go over deals, to ask questions, to clarify, just to be inspired and encouraged however you want to use that time. So if that all sounds good to you, and if you would like to get together and if you'd like to book a mentoring session with me, then please just email me at thepropertyteacher@gmail.com, thepropertyteacher@gmail.com, and we'll get it in the diary, we'll get it arranged, and hopefully I'll be meeting with you and talking to you soon. Here's to successful property investing.